Part 151. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1506. From the day he set out on his journey, Leon Carlos was surrounded by magicians from various schools. They gave him guidance, taught him, and answered various questions for him. They also inevitably tempted him and urged him. When you get to Dragon Island, you have to follow your teacher closely. The kind who never leaves? Thinking too much. Not to mention that my teacher could run from Nevis to the New World, then take a long trip to the sea, and not come back for 10 years. When he was in Nevis, I didn't follow him all day long. You should consult him more. Ask him more questions. Try to get topics from him. Get the most cutting-edge topics. As long as he is willing to give you directions, you will be able to advance quickly. Thinking too much. There is no topic in my teacher's hands that is not cutting-edge. What I really have to worry about is not that there are no cutting-edge topics, but that there are too many topics and I simply can't handle them. Don't be like now, busy with various affairs all day long, busy managing the hospital for him, and you don't even have time to do your own research. Thinking too much. A necromancer like me requires qualifications or talent, and his only advantage is carefulness and patience. If I had any talent, it would have been taken away by some magician, so that I would not be given to a level 2 Nordmark mage to work in the public health system. On the contrary, after following the teacher, I need projects and projects, resources and resources, and guidance. The teacher needs me to help him manage the hospital, so I will try my best to manage it so that he does not have to worry about trivial matters. This is what I should do for him. Moreover, in the process of managing the hospital, the various cases I saw also helped me a lot in my growth. If you don't hold on to your teacher, you will be left behind by that little girl from the nature order. Oh, senior sister Anavia is very nice. And since she and I have different directions, she won't steal my resources. The ones who really want me to overpower her are actually you, right? Leon Carlos didn't know who would advance first between him and Anavia. The magicians and nature priests made a bet. Most magicians, especially necromancers, are betting on him. Leon is only at level 8. To advance to level 9, less accumulation is required. But level 8 to level 9 is a big pass, and level 9 to level 10 is a small pass. Anavia has clear issues, and the advancement will be faster. When Leon gets there, he will have a new subject to do. Anavia has to change the subject, which will delay the progress. That's not necessarily true. Won't Master Nordmark arrange the subject based on her situation? Bet 100 standard magic crystals. Bet on a tree heart. These bets will not be made in front of Leon Carlos, nor will they be known to him. In short, after arriving on Dragon Island, he was gloriously promoted from the director of the Oak Forest Hospital to the director of the Silver Dragon Territory Non-Human Hospital. All dragon blood dependents, all dependents who are ready to undergo transformation, and all dependents who have physical problems and need medical help, all come to his hands first. Height, weight, heartbeat, breathing and blood pressure, various basic information collection. X-ray, CT, MRI, abdominal ultrasound, cardiac ultrasound, blood test and urine test, various examinations. Grade records, ability records, chromosome testing and analysis. Leon Carlos instantly became a spinning top. Among all the people who came this time, he was the only one with the lowest rank and lowest position. He had no subordinates or disciples to help him. Even if Anavia came with her, her project was done together with the nature priests, and she would not do it alone. Fortunately, the teacher assigned all the natives to him as usual. The giants who watch the gates, the dwarfs who do fine work, the halflings who cook, and the barbarians who serve the halflings. Thank God there are people doing all the rough work like welcoming guests, cleaning, catering, etc. in a hospital. For basic information collection, level, and ability recording, Leon Carlos spent a day teaching the indigenous spellcasters how to operate and how to record. The left and right tower spirits can perform voice input and can also recognize the languages of various humanoid creatures. It doesn't matter if they don't know common language. As for other inspections, as long as there is a tower spirit and a magic circle, as long as the person is sent to the magic circle and the magic circle is turned on, the undead can do the work. What? Are the undead creatures too scary? Leon Carlos has been working at Oak Grove Hospital for so many years, and has long since mastered the technique of undead trapping. Over a period of time, he tested 200 to 300 of various humanoid creatures and various magical beasts, which was really eye-opening. From the lizard man with a lizard head and scaly skin, to the two-headed ogre with two heads, to the centaur whose upper body is a human and the lower body is a horse. What is normal? What is abnormal? When is it true that someone is sick or physically defective and cannot undergo transformation for the time being? What is the cause of this humanoid disease? For example, one ogre said he had a headache. Was it a clogged blood vessel in his brain, or was he growing a second head, a normal growing pain? A centaur complained of a stomachache, of his body's organs, which ones were in the upper half and which ones were in the lower half. Which organs should be considered for stomach pain? All these situations must be summarized, analyzed, and given preliminary opinions by him. Then, what can be handled will be handled by oneself, and what cannot be handled will be transferred upwards to the hands of the natural priest, to the hands of the medical mage, to the hands of the teacher. The teacher will also ask him, "What do you think? Why do you think so? Do you think your judgment is correct? Have you done a thorough examination before? For example, about the centaur, have you done an ultrasound on him?" He had seen all the creatures he had only seen in books but never seen in person during this period. Doing tests during the day, pulling up records at night, and copying into notebooks day and night. Greed had taught him that if there was something in the book, it was best to copy and draw important things by himself. Only when you can draw those anatomy diagrams by yourself without reading a book can they be firmly remembered in your mind and become your own. You can use it for comparison when you see a patient, so you don't have to flip through the book temporarily. When Gretel called him over to ask about the situation, he saw 5 or 6 floating dishes with a diameter of 1 foot floating around him. On each floating dish, there were several thick stacks of notebooks. One book was opened here and there. 1. When the breeze blows, the pages of the book turn, densely packed with words and pictures. Greet flipped through a few books and nodded with satisfaction. "Good job. How are you? Have you learned anything recently? It seems that whether they are humans, humanoid creatures, or other monsters, there are always some similarities." Leon Carlos tried hard to search his memory and answered carefully. As long as you master these similarities and summarize the rules, you don't have to panic when you encounter creatures you have never seen before. When you encounter patients you have never seen before, you can also deduce according to the rules. This answer was not what Greet expected, but it was pretty good. Greet nodded with satisfaction and patted him on the shoulder. "It's a good idea, work hard. In the recent transformation work of Dragon Blood relatives, you should take a good look at the before and after comparison of each transformation object, and study the changes in their bones, muscles, internal organs, etc. If you need research objects, you can take some of the ordinary beasts that have been transformed before and dissect them. If they are not enough, you can transform them yourself and continue the dissection. Within 10 transformations, you can use the magic circle as you like without asking me. Is teacher?" Leon Carlos received a new assignment and rushed back to work excitedly. How do dragon wings grow from the back? How are bones connected, how muscles and ligaments grow, and how nerves branch and extend? How do dragon scales emerge from the body surface, and how are they retracted? During this process, what changes do the skin layer, fat layer, and underlying muscles and blood vessels undergo? In the process of dragon blood relatives becoming stronger, what transformations have the internal organs undergone to support the bones and muscles of the whole body? In addition to the heart and lungs, are there corresponding changes in other internal organs? The most fundamental thing is, after the dragon blood family was transformed, why was the path to advancement opened? What essential changes have they undergone during this process? These need to be studied bit by bit. As long as you have researched it, you can publish papers as you like, but more importantly, you are one step closer to the essence of life. It has great benefits for medical treatment, transfiguration, transformation of undead creatures, and all kinds of magic. Thank you, teacher. It's such a luxury to dissect dragon-blooded creatures at will. Transforming dragon-blooded creatures is even more luxurious. So far, transformations other than completing dragon missions require the teacher's personal approval. It feels like if he continues to study, he will be very close to a 9th level mage. Leon Carlos rushed back with energy burning in his body, ready to extend his working hours for another hour. What? Have a meal? Let the halfling make more sandwiches and eat them while checking and recording, without spending any extra time. What? Bath. Change clothes? What is cleansing used for? Shooting it from beginning to end takes less than a minute. What? Entertainment. With so many projects waiting to be researched, what entertainment do you need? There are 24 hours a day, except for sleeping, meditating and going to the toilet, the rest of the time can be devoted to work. Gretel smiled and watched him leave. Very good, these are projects that he wants to study but can't spare the time to study. Sure enough, in order to produce results, we still need to have enough manpower. Without manpower, these dragon-blooded monsters and dragon-blooded dependents can only be left in vain and cannot be studied one by one. It's like there are gold and silver treasures piled up in the treasury, but there is no way to use them. It is such a pity. Well, with Carlos looking like this, it feels like advancement is just around the corner. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1507. Even if he could advance to level 9, Carlos could only work on the periphery of research. The hope for the advancement of the entire project still lies with high-level mages, especially the top mages. Gretel finished today's transformation work and headed to the 12th floor. In Senior Sister Philby's exclusive research room, it was so quiet that you could hear the crackle of static electricity. The senior sister sat in front of the microscope, staring closely at a small beaker in front of her, her face serious. No. No. Still not. Senior sister, what are you doing? Greet looked over. There was a loud bang, and he jumped back quickly and screamed. Sister, aren't you? How have I offended you? If you can't do it, don't shock me. I moved out the cut points. It had only been 2 days since we last met, and the senior sister's face was full of exhaustion, and even the circles under her eyes were closed, making people suspect that all her energy were poured into the microscope. However, after I moved out, I still couldn't find the direction if I wanted to study it further. I tried it repeatedly with the electron flow, and tried it back and forth. Every time the electron flow swept over it, it would move, but it always failed to unfold as it originally did. Can it move? Senior sister, you have found a way out? Come on, senior sister, let me see how you do it. Gretel became interested and moved directly behind senior sister. Philby turned back and rolled her eyes at him. See? What do you think? Your mental power is so delicate. Can you see electrons? Well. Greet retreated in defeat. Not to mention electrons, his mental power detection couldn't even detect atoms. Scanning chromosomes with a microscope and electron microscope, I can only see the results calculated by the electron microscope. God knows what the scanning process is like. He took 2 steps back, then took another step to the side, stretching his head again and again, trying not to disturb the senior sister. Archmage Philby stopped paying attention to him and focused on the beaker in front of him. No response. No response. Still no response. From the side and behind, Greet could only see a piece of calm water with no ripples at all. As for the senior sister's tense-eyed face, her eyes that are almost burning with concentration, her masseter muscles that are bulging due to exertion. Sorry, Greet didn't look in this direction at all, couldn't see anything. Well. A gentle sigh sounded again, disturbing the water in the beaker. Archmage Philby leaned back and held her head in her hands, feeling infinitely annoyed. I've tried everything I can, vacuum, air, nitrogen, pure water, salt water, the glucose water you made, it won't work if I put it in anything, it's either too lively, too stagnant, or there's too much interference. It cannot be stabilized in a vacuum, nor can it be stabilized in air or nitrogen. Most of the energy must be spent on lifting this small segment of chromosomes. In pure water, the electron flow is very uncomfortable, and in salt water there is too much interference, probably due to its own charge. Most of the electron flow is busy doing useless work. Greet also sighed behind her. He could probably understand the senior sister's idea, which was to use the push of electron flow to spread out this chromosome, unfold it, and reveal every component of it. From this point of view, senior sister's mental power is indeed much more delicate than mine. She can actually feel the components in the chromosomes. But the medium is wrong and there is no way. When it comes to media, materials are really a big problem. It is basically a matter of luck to find out which one can be used from the vast sea of liquids, solids, and gases. Moreover, it is not only the type of material, but also the purity of the material, the proportion of the material, and the use temperature. For example, when running gel electrophoresis, Greet knows how to do this. According to the size of the DNA fragments to be separated, use gel buffer to make an agarose gel of appropriate concentration. Heat and melt, add fluorescent dye, mix thoroughly, and condense. Pour the electrophoresis buffer into the electrophoresis tank, pour the loading buffer into the DNA sample, mix well, and slowly add the sample mixture to the gel loading hole. Put on the electrode and run electrophoresis. It's not like Gretel can't tell his senior sister directly about this list of things, and then let her try it slowly. The problem is, he couldn't answer the following series of questions. What are the ingredients of gel buffer? What are the components of DNA loading buffer? Which kind of fluorescent dye is used? Wait, does the current parliament have fluorescent dyes? He can provide agar, but the purity of the agar is another matter. Agar used for bacterial culture and agar used for gel electrophoresis are definitely not the same thing. The concentration of the gel is another question. Then, when applying the electrode, how many volts should be used and how long should it run? The most important thing is, why can we use this method to analyze what she needs? Gretel couldn't answer any of these questions. Moreover, when he was asked to rub out a piece of tape with his bare hands when he didn't have what he wanted, he really couldn't rub it out. So why did you let me do this? I can't answer this question, so I rashly provide a solution to senior sister. I'm afraid I'll get beaten. Gretel, who didn't want to be beaten, had to find another way. He patiently watched his senior sister's operation several times, quietly stepped back a few steps, and started tinkering on his own. Agar powder, powdered sugar, clean water, various candied flowers, and molds. Lay everything out one by one and start doing it carefully. Add agar powder to boiling water, watch it melt, and pour half of it into the mold. Pause for a moment, choose a candied rose, cut off the stem and carefully put it into the mold, then pour half of the agar water, put it into the ice magic circle, and wait for it to solidify. Oops. There was too little agar-agar powder, and as soon as I poured it out of the mold, it broke immediately. Come again. This time I doubled the agar-agar powder. Well, this time it was too thick and uneven, and the little bits of agar-agar powder inside didn't melt. Come again. This time adjust the proportion of agar powder. What's wrong with the technique this time? Why are there bubbles in the frozen agar? Come again. This time the ice magic circle seems to have cooled down too quickly, and the agar-agar gel produced is a bit crooked. Greet kept trying with his head down. When Archmage Philby finished today's experiment and turned around, she saw a row of snacks she had never seen before on the experimental table not far away. Flowers with different postures are frozen in crystal clear gel, still maintaining the appearance of budding or fully blooming. This junior brother's craftsmanship is quite good, but the problem is... Gretel. What are you doing? She asked, strolling over and grabbing a snack. The hemisphere, which is smaller than the palm of your hand, is trembling in the dish. The unknown flowers inside are reflected through the gel, making them look even more pitiful and cute. Taking a casual bite, it seems to be a little sweet and a little sour, but whether it is sweet or sour, it is very light. If you want to be full on this, or even if you want to be 3/3 full, the possibility is very slim. After another scan, a lot of waste products were thrown away on the side of the experimental table. Broken, cracked, bubbles, slightly off color, petals inside floating out of the pastries. Oh, I'll make something for Cyrilla. Gretel stopped his hand and smiled at his senior sister as if nothing had happened. I have been busy these days and haven't been with her for a long time. Make something interesting to coax her and let her know that I am thinking of her and miss her. Senior sister, look at this flower snack, how I did it sample. It looks okay, but it doesn't taste good. Philby pondered. Young girls, one after another, like beautiful and good-looking things. But Sarah prefers delicious food, big fish and meat, fried, boiled and grilled. This kind of thing that is purely for the sake of appearance and has no feeling when you eat it one bite at a time may not be to her liking. As long as you're happy. She swallowed her words and waved her hand casually. With a thought, he connected to the control center on this level and quietly sent a message. After a moment, the door to the laboratory opened with a bang, and Cyrilla ran in happily. Greet. Have you made something delicious for me? Then, here Greet pointed to the experimental table. Cyrilla's eyes lit up, and she rushed over and grabbed a small plate. Hold it in your hand and look left and right, turn it around, hold the bottom of the plate with your fingertips, and turn it back and forth. It looks so beautiful. Gretel, why did you think of doing this? I haven't been with you for a long time. I'll make you some gifts, try it. Is it delicious? Why did Cyrilla ask him the second question? With a flick of his finger, an agar snack flew into his mouth. Dots of sweet-scented osman thus float inside, making the entire pastry pale golden in color. A layer of honey is poured on the outside, giving it a fragrant aroma. She carefully took a bite, chewed it twice more, and then put the whole snack into her mouth with a ah sound. It's quite delicious, but it smells like honey and flowers. This thing itself has no taste, Gretel. Is there any way to make a snack that is sweet throughout? I put too little sugar. If I put too much sugar, it won't condense well. Greet replied flatly. Cyrilla grabbed another snack with roses on it and ate it, then turned to look at Philby. Senior sister, well, you should eat too. Silver blue eyes stared straight at Philby, and if you don't eat, I will stuff it into your mouth. Philby couldn't resist the kindness, so she had no choice but to pick up one and bite it in small bites. While tasting it, my mind wandered, holding the large piece of agar-agar snack in my hand, kneading. After rubbing it for a while, a ray of electricity flew out of the fingertips unconsciously and passed through the agar gel. Huh! Her eyebrows suddenly moved. When the current passed through, the petals inside the gel seemed to move slightly. If this kind of gel is used instead of vacuum, water, saline, etc., and the chromosome fragments she cut are placed in it, can these chromosome fragments be spread out in it? Great! What is this thing called? Agar. How much do you have left? Give me some. I'll give you this bottle first. If you don't have enough, I'll get it later. This is made by Haishawa. It's very good. Senior sister, just use it. Don't worry about not having enough. Gretel responded and took out a large bottle of agar powder. Philby grabbed it and rushed to the experimental table without thinking. Greet followed the past and pointed out. I brewed it with hot water, but it's not easy to brew it thoroughly. If senior sister heats it, she can consider other methods. You can try different concentrations. Sirara's head turned to the left, then to the right, then to the left, then to the right. Blinking his eyes, he suddenly felt that the snacks in his mouth no longer tasted good. Greet. Is this gift for me or for your senior sister? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1508. One daughter is married twice, one servant is married to two masters. Borrow chickens to lay eggs, borrow flowers to offer to Buddha. What should you do if you are caught doing something bad? Danger. Gretel, danger. The alarm in Greet's heart rang loudly. Making something for senior sister is nothing. Cyrilla is not a stingy girl, and she will not be unhappy because he makes something for senior sister in any case. However, he claimed to be giving her a gift and delivered it to her to win her favor. At this time, she caught him and found out that he was using it as a cover to inspire her senior sister's research work. Gretel estimated that Sarah would probably be angry with him, very, very angry. The kind that can't be coaxed in 3 days. At the critical moment, Gretel remained calm and his heart did not beat, exerting his composure to the extreme. Looking directly at Sarah, his eyes did not shift, and he smiled slightly. This is just for you. Look, Sarah, these are the flowers you like. These roses were planted in front of your house when we were on Elf Island. These osmanthus flowers were shaken down by you, and you even soiled a silk scarf for me to wash for you. These daisies were obtained by you from the magic plant of. He checked everything and found out all the treasures. The smile on Sarah's lips grew bigger and bigger, and finally she smiled and grabbed Gretel. You are great. The taste of this snack is a bit bland, but it looks so beautiful. Greet, please teach me how to make it. I want to make something that tastes good and looks beautiful, so that I can scare my parents when I turn around. Okay, wait a minute, let me say a few words to senior sister first. Senior sister, when this thing is used to make chromosomes escape, it is best to purify it. Purity is very important. You can add some conductive liquid to make it conduct electricity. Pay attention to the time and voltage intensity of overcharging. You may want to try this slowly. After saying a few words quickly, he was dragged out by Sarah, not even having time to put away the molds on the table. Instead, Sarah rushed to the door, waved her hand back, and a whirlwind swept up all the tools on the table and followed her out. Little guy, you're pretty good at coaxing girls. Archmage Philby looked at Greet's back, shook her head and chuckled. After laughing for a while, he took a deep breath and raised his voice. Tailing. I'm here, Your Excellency the Archmage. What are your orders? Arrange 5 invisible servants to come over and operate according to my requirements. Invisible Servant number 1 is responsible for weighing the agar powder, weighing 1 gram, 2 grams, 3 grams, until 10 grams each time. Invisible Servant number 2 is responsible for preparing distilled water and brushing test tubes. Should Nordmark Master have built in the requirements for brushing test tubes? Yes, it's already built in. Your Excellency, Archmage, please continue to give orders. Okay. Prepare enough distilled water, brush 2050 ml test tubes, 2100 ml flasks, and 2200 ml flasks. Invisible Servant number 3 is responsible for adding agar powder and distilled water to the test tubes. I will write down the ratio later. You, then shake the tube. Invisible Servant number 4 is responsible for adjusting the heating magic array. She rattled off a long list of instructions. In a moment, 5 invisible servants emerged from the magic circle reserved for invisible servants in the Mage Tower. They each performed their duties and began to work. Archmage Philby sat in front of the experimental table, took a long breath, and then let out a long breath. Then, he focused on the parchment in front of the experimental table and began to recheck the experimental plan. Regarding the concentration of agar powder, do you need to make several more gradients? After the agar powder is dissolved and heated, to what degree should it be heated, or should it be boiled directly? If it is boiled directly, how long does it take to cook? What should be added to agar gel to make it conduct electricity better? How should the cut chromosome spots be stuffed into the frozen agar block to facilitate the passage of electricity? Also, little Gretel said that the agar needs to be purified. How to purify it? To what extent is it purified? Which kind of purified product can allow the cut chromosome spots to expand in the agar gel? As an 18th level Archmage, she has a large number of invisible servants, golems, and disciples to run errands for her with just one thought or order. And what she has to do is to constantly think, verify, modify, verify, then overthrow her plan, and then verify again. In the process of thinking, the first plate of agar gel has been made. Well, it turns out that agar cannot be completely dissolved unless it is boiled. It must be boiled in boiling water for more than 10 minutes. In the heating experiment, the batch that is not boiled can be directly crossed out. 20% content, 19% content, all the way to 1% content, were neatly lined up in front of her, like a plate of snacks in a snack shop. Archmage Philby raised her fingertips slightly, and a thin stream of electricity came out of her hand, injected from one end of the agar gel and moved to the other end. Well, the concentration of agar gel seems to have nothing to do with conductivity. But, on another level, the more concentrated salt water you add to it, the more conductive it becomes. With another raise of his fingertips, a small invisible piece of chromosome cut out from the magic circle was mixed with salt water and injected into the hole dug in the agar gel. The second ray of current was injected, so delicate that you could see the mental power of electrons, and you could feel the tiny chromosome fragments, so subtle that they were completely invisible to the naked eye, being pushed forward by the current. The agar gel that seemed crystal clear to the naked eye showed countless holes under the scanning of mental power. Large and small, like a large piece of sponge or a large piece of cut cheese. And those chromosome fragments were moving forward, in the holes of the sponge and cheese, trying to pass through the holes, and they got stuck. Still too big? It is not a whole bunch of chromosomes, nor is it a chromosome, but a point cut off from a chromosome strip. Is it still too big for these holes? The chromosomes, which are like balls of wool and twisted into a ball, cannot pass through these holes, and even a small cut-off point cannot pass through the holes. Archmage Philby frowned tightly. To break it up, break it into little pieces. Danica, Arsu, Porcius, she contacted the tower spirit, sent a voice to the 11th floor, and named her 3 disciples. Come up. I have a task for you. Danica is responsible for purifying agar, and she has various purification magic circles and various potions at her disposal, but Philby only wants results. Arzu was tasked with finding a potion that would better allow electricity to pass through the agar gel. Porteous is responsible for tossing about chromosomes, magic, potions, electricity, magnetism, and using them in various ways. The request is also to break them into pieces. The order given by the senior sister through the tower spirit can be clearly understood by Gretel after a little communication with the tower spirit. He couldn't help but smile slightly. Senior sister, come on. Although I don't know what the buffer is, I probably know that it is a very troublesome thing, and it cannot be prepared by simple high school chemistry. I don't even know what the formula of the fluorescent dye is. Chromosomes need to be purified and broken. There seem to be many ways to purify them. Anyway, I don't know any of them. Well, it seems that you can add some acid, some alkali, some glycerin or something. Can enzymes be used? Which enzyme can be used? In short, running electrophoresis is a very big project, and it is all left to you. He clapped his hands happily, feeling that he had gotten rid of a very difficult and big topic, which was really very clever. Well, the next trip is to go to the nature mission. In the forest outside the Mage Tower, a group of nature priests raised an earth wall, turned the earth into stone, and planted shrubs and vines outside the wall to create a comfortable little house. In the laboratory next to the residence, Anivia stood next to Elder Irwin, staring at the two lizards through the glass cabinet. Ashuedge stood opposite them and explained to them carefully. During the mating process of lizards, it is very important to have sufficient energy supply, which can significantly affect the level of the little lizards. However, using a magic circle to provide them with energy can easily alarm them and prevent them from completing mating normally. A wisp of light green breath flew out from her fingertips and landed on the magic circle in the center of the cabinet. The two lizards quickly became active, crawled in the cabinet for a while, and then climbed onto the magic circle and stacked on top of each other. After they started, Ashuedge reached out and pressed. The magic circle gradually lit up, and the condensed natural power grew from weak to strong, and penetrated into the two lizards. "What are you studying?" Greet opened the door and walked in. Several people were staring at the lizard in the cabinet, and no one looked back at him. It wasn't until the two lizards separated and the female lizard lay motionless on the magic circle that Elder Irwin turned back with a smile. "Isn't that your topic? After the dragon eggs are laid, they should hatch as many times as possible. If there are no dragon eggs or baby dragons, we will try it with lizards first. No, we are letting them mate. Mating, laying eggs, hatching. Group testing, checking chromosomes, there is a lot of work to be done. What about artificial insemination?" Another group is doing artificial insemination. They take out the female lizard's eggs, inject the male lizard's sperm, and then put them back after cultivating them for a period of time. Another group is doing it. Ashuedge made a lot of complaints when talking about this. "Greet, how long will it take for these projects of yours to be completed? When will they be completed? I see that those dragons seem to be in a hurry." "Don't be hasty, don't be in a hurry. This topic of increasing dragon fertility and dragon egg hatching rate will not be pursued for 10 years. In fact, on the topic of dragon egg hatching, I can finish reading the literature in 1 year. Thank God." Gretel tried to appease them. "The problem of enhancing the body of the young dragon is more urgent. Well, I remember that I measured various information about the young dragon, as well as the chromosome points, and arranged for the elders to conduct targeted simulations. How is the simulation going now? This subject must be completed quickly. The young dragon's parents have already come to ask twice. In another 6 months, they will probably lose their patience. When running gel electrophoresis, agarose is used instead of agar. Agarose is extracted from agar. The extraction methods include disodium hydrogen phosphate citrate buffer method, flocculent resin combined method, etc. Before running electrophoresis, DNA needs to be isolated and plasmid DNA prepared. Of course there are many methods, including ethadium bromide density gradient method, two-phase method, acid phenol method, alkali denaturation method, methylated albumin, MAC, column chromatography, nitrocellulose method, electrophoresis method, etc. Senior sister, I don't know any of them. Not only don't I know them, I've never even heard of them. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1509. The copper dragon Noctis was extremely troubled. His son, his eldest son, the only baby dragon in his litter that successfully hatched and successfully awakened his true name, was growing very unsatisfactory. At this age, other young copper dragons can already eat centipedes, red scorpions, sand scorpions, and various poisonous insects. His son, as soon as he ate poisonous insects, immediately started coughing, sputum, chest pain, and back pain. At this age, other copper dragon hatchlings have grown to 6 feet in length, with a tail length of at least 4 feet, and can breathe acid at least 3 times a day. His son was only 4.5 feet long and looked like a small ball. As long as you activate the exhalation, you will immediately be coughing into a mess. Other young copper dragons are born with the ability to walk freely on stone walls, just like climbing. His son could fall off the stone wall after just a few steps. How can this be done? The red copper dragon living in the cave in the heart of the mountain cannot even walk around on the stone wall. It will be very difficult in the future. To this end, the copper dragon Noctis took his children to search for the elders of the copper dragon, as well as the dragon elders who were good at healing. All the tests were done, and all the healing magic that could be used on the young dragon was used, but there was no progress at all. Reluctantly, he set his expectant gaze on the new human magician. In order to find a glimmer of hope, he ran up and down, contacting the legendary dragon, and pushing the dragon tribe to recognize the arrival of humans in large numbers. He went back and forth, negotiated with Andre and Cynthia, and negotiated the compensation needed to set up a mage tower in their territory. He did not hesitate to travel across the ocean, go to Nevis to communicate with humans in person, and invited a group of magicians to come. After doing so much for you, you finally take my son's affairs to your heart. At least we should prioritize studying his situation. At least cure him quickly. Half a month after the mage tower was built, Noctis took his children and came to Gretel twice. The first trip is to do a comprehensive physical examination and take samples for chromosome testing. The second trip is now, to get the results of the physical examination, and at the same time, I simply stay here and don't leave. Greet also takes this case very seriously. After all, the child cannot afford to wait. However, curing a young dragon is not that simple. He racked his brains and did all the tests he could. Indigestion. He asked Noctis to spit out some gastric juice and compare it with the hatchling's gastric juice. The ingredients were different, but he was not sure whether that difference was directly related to indigestion. Is there damage to the digestive tract? I have seen X-rays, CT scans, and MRIs. Perhaps because he did not know enough about the young dragon, neither the tower spirit nor the oak staff took the initiative to report an error. Greet had no choice but to roll up his sleeves and read one by one. Esophagus. Why is the dragon's esophagus so covered in wrinkles and scales? It's really difficult to find the esophageal holes through imaging. Gastric ulcer? In the same way, he was not familiar with the structure of the dragon's stomach. If he asked whether there was an ulcer, he couldn't tell it simply from the images. The same goes for intestinal ulcers and cardiac insufficiency. He knew very little about the dragon clan. We need to do some more tests. In addition to this, are there any other dragons who can give me a comparison? Gretel sat in front of the copper dragon Noctis and answered seriously. Noctis frowned, tried hard to hold back the question why do we still need to check, and asked directly. What else should I check? Do a gastroscopy. Oh, just wrap the secret eye with vines and enter it from his throat into his stomach. Let me take a closer look. Now I suspect that there is a tear from his throat to his stomach, and the image cannot be seen clearly. Look directly. Wrapped in vines, Noctis thought about the operation method and frowned even more. If the vines extend in, will the child feel uncomfortable? For example, he may feel like vomiting or something. Is there any other way? If you want to vomit, you will definitely want to vomit. During esophagoscopy and gastroscopy, vomiting is almost inevitable. Generally speaking, it is suppressed by strong anesthesia, so that the epiglottis does not feel irritation. Greet replied calmly. There will definitely be discomfort. If you open your mouth for a long time, or endure a vine inserted through your nostrils for a long time, it will definitely not be very comfortable. However, our magic can suppress the discomfort to the greatest extent. Feel. But if you don't use the vines to observe, it will be the same if you let the spirit of the incorporeal contract go in and take a look. Gretel summoned the incorporeal snake in response. Noctis stared at the little snake for a long time, tried hard to feel its energy level, and shook his head. Let's use vines first. This little snake is too strong, much stronger than his child. Even if an incorporeal or spiritual body enters the body of his child, the spiritual pressure may have an adverse effect on the child. That would be great if you agree. Gretel stood up and shook hands with him. Of course, I hope to find more dragons. Copper dragons are the best, but if that doesn't work, dragon beasts can also be used. Let me check them one by one to know what healthy dragons look like. It will also be convenient for comparison, right? That afternoon, in the examination room on the first floor of the Mage Tower, the little young dragon stood in front of Gretel, looking nervous. Greet sat opposite it, also a little nervous. The so-called smallness of the young dragon is also compared to the adult dragon. With a body length of 1.5 meters, a tail length of 1 meter, and a shoulder height of 0.8 meters, the dragon is actually not small at all, and is taller than a wolf. If this person were to pounce on him, the back of his head would hit the ground on the spot. Don't worry, it doesn't hurt or itch. Just sit quietly and you'll be fine in a while. He first threw out several anesthesia spells to numb everything from the nostrils to the epiglottis. Then a green vine emerged from between his fingers, rolled up the secret eye, penetrated Xiaolong's nostrils, and snaked into the esophagus. Up and down, look carefully. Well, normal, it's normal here. Further down, huh? What's the matter? The copper dragon Noctis immediately stretched his head over. Greet moved the vines, observed them carefully several times, and looked at the young dragon with a pleasant expression. Come on, why don't you try to swallow? Pretend to eat something. The young dragon swallowed a few times as he was told. The overlapping folds of the esophagus relax as it moves. Gretel stared at a fixed point on the esophagus for a long time, then let out a long breath. Currently, it looks like a hiatal hernia, which is congenital. So after eating something, gastric juice will reflux. If you eat food with poisonous sacs, the reflux will be even worse, making the child uncomfortable. This is not difficult, just block it. Good. What? What is it? I've been treated with healing techniques several times before, why can't it be cured? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1510. Isn't it normal that the therapy can't cure it? Gretel wanted to ask this question. Those elves in the elf forest who had eaten too much radiation and whose genes had collapsed could not be cured by the healing technique. In the end, they were cured by the limited wishing technique. The eldest prince, who was cursed by the devil, could not be cured by any medical treatment. In the end, he was cured by using a large combined spell. Let's just talk about that golden dragon. What's his name? In short, he is the one who was lifted down by the 4 silver dragons. He has done the otolith repositioning and has also passed the treatment skills. More than one legendary dragon has also seen it. Isn't it still not cured? Of course, blaming a patient or a patient's family member, a healer in this world might be able to do it, but Greet, who had been disciplined for more than 10 years in his previous life, really couldn't do it. Not only could he not do it, he smiled gently and calmly and explained to the other party seriously. Because the principle of healing is to make the injured and broken parts grow and heal quickly. Whether the healing is complete depends on the guidance of the practitioner. This is the difference between high-level healers and ordinary healers. Your child is not injured, he is just born with a bad condition. This situation cannot be cured by using treatment without a purpose. Then what is his condition now? The copper dragon Noctis actually hasn't understood the term hiatal hernia yet. Esophagus, this word is not difficult, you can guess it by guessing. Hiatus, this is understandable. Hernia, what is it? Then, hiatal hernia, taken together, what on earth is it? My child, why can't he eat well and grow well even if he has this? You mean, there is a hole in the child's esophagus, and the food leaked through the hole to other places. He reached out and gestured at his neck, trying desperately to understand what Greet meant. Across the table, next to Gretel, Sirara also turned her head and looked at Gretel together. Yes or no? Is it this way? That's what I guessed too. Just like it sounds. If there is a hole in the esophagus, even if it is a small hole, it is no wonder that the child will feel uncomfortable if he eats something poisonous. However, medicine is profound, and the speed of the brain has been increased to the limit. Faced with a vast medical vocabulary, it is not possible to guess it just by reading the meaning. Gretel shook his head. No, esophageal rupture is a rupture of the esophagus, and hiatal hernia is a hiatal hernia. The situation you are talking about is called esophageal rupture. It's okay to have a ruptured esophagus. There is a hole in the esophagus, and all kinds of food with bacteria or digestion with gastric juice leak out from here and leak directly into the mediastinum. A large number of bacteria have entered the place that is supposed to be sterile, and acidic gastric juice has entered the place that cannot withstand corrosion. In a few days, you will be seriously infected in minutes. The child's esophagus is really going to rupture, and he won't survive until now. While explaining, he summoned Silent Phantom and pointed at the image to explain to the copper dragon. Of course, the summoned image is a human anatomy diagram, not a dragon anatomy diagram. Let's just take a look at this. Hiatal hernia is the diaphragm, the muscle that separates the chest and abdominal cavity. The esophagus passes through the hole above and enters the abdominal cavity. This hole is called the hiatus. It has a weak spot, and the internal organs in the abdominal cavity follow the hole. Come to the chest. The copper dragon Noctis was already a little confused, his eyes were wandering, and he didn't know where to look. Sirara got closer to the 2 silent phantoms, looked left, right, and around in circles, and almost reached in and touched them. You can't even touch it, it's not an entity, you can't even touch it, so it's of no use. Greet pulled her aside and continued. Usually there are no symptoms, because the abdominal pressure is low, and the internal organs in the abdomen stay in the abdominal cavity. But when the abdominal pressure is high, such as after eating full, such as constipation, such as coughing, such as squeeze dash. He made a pushing gesture, and the silent phantom fluctuated, like a balloon being inflated and then squeezed by a hand. The internal organs in the abdominal cavity will follow the weak part and burrow into the chest cavity. After burrowing in, because it is very close to the nerves in the chest cavity, it will interfere with the nerves, and then cough, chest pain, back pain, etc. will occur. Coming. The copper dragon Noctis concentrated on staring at the light and shadow summoned by Gretel. Although it is an anatomy diagram of the human race, the meaning is always the same. After watching the three-dimensional image fluctuate several times, I can always understand a general idea. Of course, he still had questions to ask. But my child doesn't cough when he eats other things. He only coughs when he eats various poisons. Maybe, when you eat poison, your stomach will secrete more acid, or will it secrete special substances? Gretel had never seen patients who ate poison in large quantities in his previous life, but this did not prevent him from inferring based on the principle. A large amount of stomach acid will more easily irritate nerves. Special substances used to digest poisons can also easily irritate nerves. Then he doesn't feel uncomfortable immediately after eating it. Gastric acid secretion does not reach its peak immediately after eating. Greet answered fluently without thinking. It's pity that he is an emergency surgeon. He has to face all kinds of patients who are not under his control every day. He also has to make differential diagnosis of various conditions and prioritize. Chest pain, back pain, is it a sign of myocardial infarction or gastroesophageal reflux? If the diagnosis is wrong, and you call your colleagues from the cardiology department to come down to see gastroesophageal reflux, you will be laughed at by your colleagues for a year. So when Gretel explained it to Noctis, it was really fluent. Generally speaking, heartburn caused by gastroesophageal reflux will start half an hour to an hour after eating and last for an hour or two in humans. I'm not sure about dragons, but it definitely doesn't happen immediately after eating. Not feeling well. Noctis lowered his head and thought. The copper dragon eats poison, the crystal dragon eats gold, silver, and gems, the black dragon eats scavengers, the white dragon eats frozen food, etc. Each kind of dragon has its own favorite food, and there are always some that are not good at digesting, or have difficulty digesting. Okay. Gretel said that it is very possible that the stomach secretes something special when eating poison. If things go on like this stimulation continues. Then how to treat it? He leaned forward, closer to Gretel. Greet calmly spread his hands. Hernia is not difficult to treat, just repair it. The most mature way is to make a hole in the abdomen and pull out the organs herniated into the chest. What? Noctis was already jumping to his feet. Open a hole? Cut a hole in your belly. My baby is only 3 years old. Even though he has grown to over 1 meter long and is almost 1 meter tall when standing on all fours, he is only 3 years old. Standing in front of me, there is such a small ball that you have to lower your head to the ground to reach it. How could such a young child endure a hole in his stomach? Can it be treated without treatment? He asked cautiously. Sarala has jumped up. No treatment? Why are you here? After so much trouble and research, you say there is no treatment. Sarala, Greet pulled her hard first and asked her to sit back down. Unlike Sarara, Gretel has seen too many patients and their families who struggle repeatedly. Is surgery necessary? Can I not do it? Can I treat it conservatively? Do you have to stay and hang out? I'm very busy at work. Can you prescribe some medicine to take back home so that I don't have to stay here all day? Can I not take this medicine? I heard that once you take some medicines, you have to take them for life and cannot stop. Even if he doesn't want to receive treatment during the day, he rushes back at night. If you don't want treatment today, you will rush back tomorrow. After going back and forth for 17 or 18 times, the doctor couldn't cure it. The doctor asked in surprise, and the patient took out the medicine and answered, "My friend said that the medicine is 30% poisonous. I have never taken medicine." If you don't want to take medicine, you have to ask the doctor for the curative effect. If there is no curative effect, it means the doctor is not good. Anyone who is a doctor and has a slightly inferior psychological quality will be so angry with this kind of patient that he will vomit blood. Fortunately, as the saying goes, if you vomit and vomit, you will get used to it, and if you are angry and angry, you will not be angry at all. Gretel was very calm at this time, looking at the copper dragon Noctis. His expression did not change at all. Even if you put a lie detector on him, you can't detect the changes in his mood. If gastroesophageal reflux causes heartburn, it can easily lead to esophageal erosion, esophageal stenosis, and even erosion of blood vessels, causing esophageal bleeding. A child at such a young age would choke and cough repeatedly and accidentally inhale the coughed-up material into his lungs, causing aspiration pneumonia. It is also very common to seriously affect the growth and development of children. I explain the condition, I explain the complications, and I also explain the consequences. The decision of whether to treat or not is still in the hands of the patient. If the child is young, it is in the hands of the patient's guardian. As a doctor, even if the patient refuses to be treated by him in the end, then he will not be allowed to treat it. It is not necessarily necessary to snatch the child away from the parents and then forcibly treat the child. The copper dragon Noctis lowered his head and pondered for a long time. The little guy has been coughing and vomiting since he was born, which happens frequently. He is smaller than other young dragons of the same age, which is visible to the naked eye. As for aspiration pneumonia and the like, although the dragon family's constitution is strong, the child has experienced many dangers and has been brought to older healers many times. He weighed the consequences of treatment and the consequences of no treatment for 7 or 8 times in his mind. He stood up again and walked around the silent phantom once and again. After turning around a few times, he looked at Gretel. What's next? The next step is to use treatment to make the diaphragm grow and make the hole smaller so that the things in the abdominal cavity will not flow into the chest. How big of an opening do you need to make? Not too big, not too big. Gretel raised his hand, and 3 vines stretched out from his fingertips, swaying. The thinnest part is less than a millimeter in diameter, and the thickest part is no more than the thickness of a chopstick. It's just a few vines that can be extended in. The damage to the body won't be great. Noctis stretched out his hand and gestured, then looked back at his child. Feeling that his observation was not reliable, he pulled the vine over and made 2 gestures on the child. Taking a deep breath, he turned his head and turned his back to Gretel. Then treat it. Why are you turning around? What are you doing with your back to me? You still have to turn your back to your child. What's going on? You can't bear to look at it? Gretel felt so sick that he reluctantly swallowed it back. With a hook of his fingertips, a vine quietly grew out and patted the copper dragon on the shoulder. Don't worry, there are still many things that need to be studied for treatment. When I understand the research, I will perform surgery on the child. What? You still need treatment? Don't you know how to do it? What I know is the principle. Just because you understand the principles doesn't mean you can start immediately. Laparoscopy is easy to say when entering the abdominal cavity. From which position? This area of the chest is full of vital things within a square inch. The esophagus, trachea, large blood vessels, and nerves are all densely packed. Not to mention breaking or tearing, even a little tugging can sometimes kill you. Intestinal surgery can stretch the vagus nerve and cause cardiac arrest. Where to open and where to enter so as to cause the least damage to the patient. After entering, there is a blunt separation all the way. What can be separated from what, and what cannot be separated from what? How to deal with inflammatory adhesions. Paste the esophageal hiatus. To put it simply, how much paste should be applied? If it's too thick, the hole will be too big, and the organs that should be herniated into the chest will continue to herniate in. If it's too thick, the esophagus is elastic, and it will be strangled, and esophageal stenosis welcomes you. Gretel did not dare to tell Noctis any of these concerns. Originally, my compliance was not strong, and I was a little worried about myself. No matter how much I heard that I didn't understand this or that, I became even more reluctant to let my child receive treatment. You are the Dragon Clan. You are the Dragon Clan. In desperation, Gretel had to find the most acceptable reason. I know what to do when it comes to humans. But when it comes to dragons, their bones, muscles, and organs all look different from humans. You have to give me some time to study it. How to study? Find me some dragons to study, preferably young dragons, baby dragons, even better, copper dragons. Each of your races is a little different. Gretel spoke unceremoniously. If you really don't have one, a pseudo-dragon of about the same size, even a dragon beast, will do. It won't hurt if the pseudo-dragon is used for dissection. And then for the child, do a high-precision examination again. Whether it is CT or NMR, the higher the accuracy, the longer it takes. Especially for nuclear magnetic resonance, staying in the magic circle for half an hour will be a great fright to the sensitive young dragon. Think about how the tiger cat screamed in agony when it was undergoing MRI for the first time on Elf Island. A young dragon's hearing is only as sensitive as a tiger cat's, but not worse than a tiger cat's. It's hard to invite baby dragons and young dragons. If you're an adult dragon, you should study me first. Noctis thought about it again and again, gritted his teeth, and dedicated himself. After I finish my research, I'll catch some pseudo-dragons and bring them to you. Speed up, my child, I'm counting on you. Thanks to Etya Mengbing for the 20,000 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1511. From the perspective of treating young dragons, Gretel is reluctant to use Noctis as a research subject. If it is too big, the energy is too strong, and the cost of examination will be too high. To perform CT scan on a young dragon, the magic light source used is only level 7 to 8 at most. Young dragons can even have level 5, damn it. But giving Noctis a CT scan? Not to mention that the length has increased by 10 times and the volume has increased by n times, this light source has to start at the legendary level. The basic level of legend is not good enough. I conservatively estimate that it will be around level 23 or 4. Greed would not have been able to do this examination if he had not borrowed Elder Batista's collection on the grounds of relieving the dragons from their illnesses and solving their fertility problems, which would be beneficial to the entire dragons. Not to mention nuclear magnetic resonance. To do nuclear magnetic resonance for adult dragons and mature dragons, the energy consumed would be lost in the ocean. To do an MRI on him, Gretel would have to go to greet him level by level, and all the large and medium-sized experiments in the entire Mage Tower would have to stop. This is the energy consumed by the Mage Tower, which is supplied by the magic crystal mine in Andre's territory. The Dragon Clan directly settles with the father-in-law. If the Mage Tower directly charges treatment fees, Gretel will have to calculate the energy cost to level 17, 28, or 28 according to the electricity price. What's more, the body structures of adult dragons and young dragons are not necessarily the same. Just like pediatrics is a specialized subject, the anatomy of adults cannot be applied to infants and young children in proportion. In other words, it is very likely that he scanned and tested for a long time, but the data he finally got was unusable, and it might even lead him in the wrong direction. If he hadn't taken this opportunity to collect a large amount of dragon body data, he wouldn't have wanted to scan Noctis again. But having said that, it's not him who generates the energy anyway, so the scan will be done. Greed carried Xiao Long into the laboratory first, and the high-precision CT scan was performed again, and again. Well, the CT done before was probably done after the child's stomach was emptied, and the hernia sac was not caught protruding above the diaphragm. This time, we need to do it in a different way. Noctis, have you brought anything to eat? Come, give the child a meal. Let's make it full. Let's do it again. What should I do if my child feels uncomfortable? What should I do if I have heartburn or cough? It's okay, I'm here. Greet is confident. Heartburn and coughing are nothing more than gastroesophageal reflux. A small part of the stomach is herniated into the chest, irritating the nerves. Throw a painkiller in there and solve all problems. In previous lives, some examinations would irritate the patient, causing severe or not so severe pain, but they had to be performed and the patient had to keep quiet. This is how the medical staff handles it. For example, before pushing the person into the CT room, they give an injection of 654-2. The child successfully completed the CT scan. This time, Gretel clearly saw the hernia sac in the three-dimensional reconstruction picture calculated by Tolling. Well, a small part of the stomach is herniated into the chest, in the chest, around the stomach is, yes, it should be fat. It's omental fat. He slapped his thigh hard and raised his voice. On the right side, the copper dragon Noctis, who was looking at the three-dimensional image with his head tilted, almost inserting his head into it, turned his head and looked at him blankly. What are you talking about? What is it? Where did the stomach enter the chest? Gretel has devoted all his energy to three-dimensional images. He drew with his fingertips, marking one red line after another in the three-dimensional image, while constantly communicating with Tailing. Tailing, label the hernia sac of the hiatal hernia, in bright yellow. Tolling, measure the diameter of the hole in all directions. Tolling, mark the relationship between the hernia sac and surrounding tissues, mark the surrounding omentum fat layer, mediastinum, pleura, esophagus, blood vessels, and the location of each tissue. Tolling, mark the location of the liver, hepatic ligament, and hepatic blood vessels. Orders were issued one by one, and the colors on the three-dimensional image projected by the tower spirit changed again and again. Noctis walked around from left to right, then from right to left, standing on tiptoes, lowering his head, leaning down, and raising his head, trying to look from all directions. He still wanted to ask, but Sarala grabbed him and dragged him out of the research room. Let's go. Gretel is deciding on a diagnosis and treatment plan. He has no time to talk to you at this time. He doesn't have time to answer any questions you ask. Let's go and take care of your child. After he has finished researching, you can ask any questions later. However, until nightfall, Gretel did not come to answer his questions or explain the treatment plan to him. The next day, the entire mage tower was shut down for a day. Gretel did a full body scan for the copper dragon Noctis. On the third day, the mage tower continued to shut down. The wife of the copper dragon Noctis, the mother of this young patient, scanned her whole body. Is there a third one? In the restaurant, the conjuration and necromancy magicians whispered quietly. The curse department was busy studying the energy changes of dragon eggs, and the necromancy department was busy transforming the dependents. The daily experiment schedule was full, and it was suddenly stopped for 2 days, which was quite uncomfortable. Even if the Plague Lord is extremely important to Black Crow Swamp and deserves to be worshipped without limit, they still inevitably talk about it quietly behind their backs. What's wrong with stopping the experiment for a few days? What's wrong with stopping the experiment for a few days? On this point, the change department has different opinions. Detailed whole body scans of dragons. Detailed images of adult and mature dragons. What rare data? For this data, let alone 2 days of experimentation, so what if we stop it for 2 years? In the past, they had to get Yinlong's physical data, even the appearance, weight, etc., and they had to spend money to rent a house, Spend money to treat guests, use their brains, and take chances. Even if the data scanned by Gretel cannot be directly owned by them, under certain conditions and at a certain price, they can still be used. Sure enough, as long as they are not my girlfriend, other dragons can be scanned and used for research. Unfortunately, there is currently no third adult dragon or above, and the entire mage tower needs to be scanned at the cost of stopping the experiment. Fortunately, a batch of dragon beasts, pseudo-dragons, and various sub-dragons were continuously sent to the hospital. The dragon beast cannot be harmed, but it can be used for CT, MRI, blood drawing, and various examinations. Pseudo-dragons, as long as they are not too wasteful and occasionally dissect a few, no dragon clan will feel sorry for them. It's not their kind anyway. Gretel inspected a batch of dragon beasts, then a batch of pseudo-dragons and sub-dragons, and practiced on the sub-dragons several times. It is good to have a powerful tower spirit. Based on CT and MRI scans, you can use Silent Phantom to create a simulated form for Gretel to simulate surgery repeatedly. Develop a plan, simulate it, modify it, simulate it again, and modify it again. After doing it 7 or 8 times, practice on a live pseudo-dragon about the same size as a copper dragon hatchling. After practicing back and forth several times, I finally reported to the copper dragon Noctis. Treatment can begin. Can you not get a hole in your stomach? Noctis and his wife have been tossing and turning these days, worrying about all kinds of things. After listening to the operation process, I still couldn't help but ask. For example, let's stick the vine through the esophagus. This really can't be done. Greet inhaled and exhaled, readjusted the magic light and shadow, and explained to him again. You see, the esophageal hiatus is on the diaphragm, outside the esophagus, not inside the esophagus. To push the vine through the esophagus means to make a hole in the esophagus, or simply cut it off. This approach will cause greater surgical damage. Or, let the incorporeal little snake go in, partially turn into a physical entity in the child's body, and perform operations, and I will use healing techniques to coordinate with it. That won't work. The older copper dragon shook his head quickly. Even if it is incorporeal, it is too strong and puts too much pressure on the child's spirituality. Just use vines. After Greed personally watched the baby dragon and fasted food and water for a day to allow the stomach to empty, the hiatal hernia repair operation officially began. Sarala, as an assistant, used the levitation technique to make the young dragon face up to the sky, floating on a mass of invisible air. Gretel took matters into his own hands and made a small hole under the midclavicular line of the young dragon's right hand and under the xiphoid process, and inserted a vine as thin as a hair into it. The soft vines divide into 2, 2 into 4, and 4 into 8, and expand bit by bit, stretching, separating, and expanding the organs without establishing pneumoperitoneum. After wandering for a moment, the vines under the midline of the right clavicle quietly parted. It enters from the lower edge of the right costal arch, close to the wall of the round ligament of the liver, and goes deep into it, turning into an intricate green network that lifts up the dark red organs little by little. What's this? It's the liver. The left lobe of the liver. Gretel's voice was soft and thin, as if he was afraid of disturbing the organs in the child's body. He almost spoke in a breathy voice. Sarala, remember, if you go in from this direction, the esophageal hiatus will most likely be covered by the liver. You need to lift up the left lobe of the liver to reveal the surgical field. But the liver is very fragile, so you need to be very careful when handling it. Try to make it bear the force evenly, and lift it gently and slowly. Otherwise, various side injuries such as liver tear, bleeding, hepatic capsular hematoma or bile leakage may easily occur. As he spoke, Carlos and Anavia behind him were brushing their records, fearing that they might miss a word. The secret eye took advantage of the situation and moved forward, and indeed saw the esophagus penetrating into the abdominal cavity in the space below the left lobe of the liver. Greet concentrated slightly, mobilized the magic power, and condensed a magic trick into the belly of the young dragon. He smeared it and marked various locations. You remember, there are no blood vessels in the visceral surface of the left outer lobe of the liver and the hepatogastric ligament, so it is safer to operate here. So we open a window here, separate the peritoneum in front of the esophagus, and fully free the lateral and posterior walls of the esophagus. Where are the organs, where are the ligaments, where are the blood vessels, and where are the vagus nerve trunks on the posterior wall of the esophagus? Everyone has seen the three-dimensional images created by CT and MRI before, and they can see which one is which. However, when it comes to laparoscopy, the lens is full of blood and it is still not clear at all. Young doctors will never be able to act alone. You can only start by laying down your hands and holding the mirror, and listen to the continuous guidance of the teacher, and gradually become familiar with the anatomical structure, and become familiar with the situation when the mirror is inserted. Okay. I saw the esophageal hiatus. Outside the operating room, the copper dragon Noctis and his wife stood side by side. Sometimes they held hands tightly and were next to each other, and sometimes they let go and walked around. His powerful mental power allowed him to hear every word Gretel said and feel every movement inside. After hearing this, I finally couldn't help but complain. Why did it take me so long to see the esophageal hiatus? What are they trying to do? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 1512. No one answered him. Gretel's assistants and disciples, all of whom were familiar with his surgical methods, helped in the operating room or listened to Gretel's explanations in the operating room. This time, those who put down their work and came outside to watch were either conjuration healers who were used to throwing healing spells and were not familiar with human anatomy. Or he is a necromancer who is familiar with human anatomy, but has never treated a living person, and his actions are always rough. They have never experienced that kind of careful, little by little separation, and the movements are like unveiling two spider webs stuck together, or like carving patterns on tofu, and they don't know what the purpose is. If Gretel had heard Noctis' question and had time, he would have answered him a few words. The tissues in the body are naturally connected to each other, so that they don't bounce around and are thrown out everywhere. When performing an operation, the first step to move a specific tissue is to separate, carefully separate. Separation is too violent, tear it apart and pull things that shouldn't be pulled. Tear blood vessels, tear organ envelopes, stretch nerves. Before the work that should be done could be done, all kinds of troubles appeared. Imagine, just brush it, and the blood will surge. With a brush, the liver was split. With a brush, the esophageal vagus nerve is stretched, and the heart rate, breathing, and blood pressure begin to surge. In severe cases, the patient dies inexplicably. No matter whether it is laparoscopic surgery or thoracotomy or laparotomy, no doctor dares to tear things apart violently and arbitrarily. Even though he had traveled to this world and had the knowledge of healing skills, Gretel still did not dare. Of course, if Gretel heard Noctis's question now, his answer would probably be, "Why are you asking now? Why did you hear what I said now?" Miscalculation, renovate the operating room, be sure to isolate outside mental exploration. Decorate according to standards that can isolate the legendary spiritual power. Right now, immediately. Well, it's great that the patient's family is isolated outside the operating room and can't see what's going on inside. Otherwise, God knows how many weird things will happen. Greet, who was not disturbed by the patient's family, still performed the operation peacefully. Determine the size of the esophageal hiatus, the contents of the hernia, and the route of the herniation into the mediastinum, and carefully dissect the hernia sac. The contents of the hernia are also contained, and excess fat tissue needs to be removed during the process, and the peritoneal sac needs to be removed. Because the hernia sac is somewhat adherent to the surrounding tissue, separation must be done very carefully. Observe the position of the cardia. Thank God, the cardia has not herniated into the chest cavity, so there is no need to consider the problem of a short esophagus. Although MRI and CT have been done, due to the problem of esophageal tension, we still need to see it with our own eyes. Next, the vine was gently cut out around the esophageal hiatus to expose the wound surface. The treatment follows up in time, guiding the diaphragm to grow and grow forward, stopping about 1 centimeter away from the esophagus. Well, according to the CT images taken before, during the eating process, the esophagus will continue to peristalsis, relax, contract, relax, and contract, pushing food downward. Leaving about 1 centimeter of space at the esophageal hiatus can probably ensure that the esophagus has sufficient patency and will not become narrow here. After everything is done, the treatment is scanned to check that there is no damage to other organs and no active bleeding. There is no need to pull out the vines. The spell is lifted and the vines disperse naturally. After a healing spell, the incision on the skin will also heal. All right. All right. Seeing the child staggering out behind Gretel, the Noctis couple's hearts instantly rose to their throats and they rushed forward. Greet described the operation process as so scary before, as he had to lift up the liver, drag down the stomach, and cut out a piece of flesh from the diaphragm. As for complications, they range from cardiac arrest, sudden death, massive bleeding, pneumothorax, to liver tear, bile leakage, and abnormal liver function after surgery. There was a long list, and his hands were shaking when he was asked to sign it. During the operation, there were a group of high-level healers standing inside, ready to provide therapeutic support at any time. God knows, his child is only level 3 according to human calculations. 2 level 18 healers, even if their son dies, are enough to bring him back from death twice. Bah, 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 bah. He took the child into his hand, looked left and right, right and left, and scanned it up and down several times with surging mental energy before making sure that the child was fine. During this process, the mental energy of the couple accidentally collided. Twice. It wasn't until they were sure that the child was okay that the couple heaved a sigh of relief, hugging the child one by one and thanking Gretel. One thing to say is that 2 tall and strong elves hugged a baby dragon with a body length of 1.5 meters, a shoulder height of 0.8 meters, and 4 feet on the ground. The visual effect is still quite scary, and there are too many things to say. After the operation, you can rest assured Greet looked at them with a smile. The child has been fasting for a period of time. Don't eat too much at once. Eat a small amount at first and slowly increase it. If there are any problems, please bring them to me. Thank you very much to Mr. and Mrs. Noctis. It is impossible to take it home first, and then take it back to see if there are any problems. After all, the dragon's nest is too far away, and traveling thousands of miles is too taxing for the child. This pair of copper dragons simply took their children to live near the hospital. The adult dragons or so have eaten a big meal and don't need to eat for at least a month. They can just take the little food the young dragons eat with them. After settling in, it didn't take long for the couple to realize something was wrong. The next day, they hurriedly came to greet with their children. Mage Nordmark, why does the child still feel uncomfortable after eating poisonous insects? How's the level? Greet immediately stood up to take a look. The little dragonette was circling around on the ground, purring softly from time to time. Noctis's wife, the adult copper dragon Delphine, looked at the child with worry. It's not as uncomfortable as before. He used to eat poisonous insects and he would always cough, choke, spit, chest pain and back pain for a long time. Now he just feels uncomfortable, and vomits acidic water. Gastroesophageal reflux. Greet came to a conclusion after hearing this. However, he did not say it immediately, but carefully recalled his diagnosis and treatment process. What did I overlook? Why does my child still have symptoms of gastroesophageal reflux after surgery? What should I do less for the treatment of hiatal hernia? That's right, fundoplication. Regarding hiatal hernia surgery, there is only one short line written in the book: after hiatal hernia repair, fundoplication is performed at the same time. It didn't explain how to do fundoplication, nor why it was done. Now, faced with the symptoms of gastroesophageal reflux, Greed went back to reading books. He read physiology, pathology, pathophysiology, internal medicine, and surgery together, and read back and forth, and then suddenly realized. Fundoplication is performed to form a valve outside the esophagus to compress the lower end of the esophagus so that food in the stomach cannot reflux into the esophagus. For patients with hiatal hernia, the diaphragm at the lower end of the esophagus is usually weak and cannot provide sufficient pressure, so fundoplication surgery is needed to supplement. I understand now, but it's too late. When I had the surgery before, I did a fundoplication as well, so I just did it. Now that the surgery is complete, I need to tell the parents of my child. Hello, during the previous surgery, I missed one procedure. Gretel estimated that Noctis didn't beat him to death because of his generosity, rather than because he had someone behind his back. After thinking about it again, there is actually no need to undergo another surgery. The textbook clearly states that 50% of gastroesophageal reflux diseases should be managed as chronic diseases. For more than 70% of patients, medical treatments such as acid suppression can achieve satisfactory results. Only about 35% of gastroesophageal reflux diseases can be considered surgical diseases. The child's condition has improved considerably, and it can obviously be treated with lifestyle management, acid suppression, etc. Wait, where can I find ranitidine for my child? Omeprazole is not available, Motilium is not available either. Have what? Is there any alternative medicine, or alternative spell? I have it. The child's condition has improved a lot as long as he grows older and has stronger digestion ability. This situation can be alleviated, Greet said solemnly. Before that, you can use spells to assist. The first is healing. Raising his hand, a mage's trick gently swept through him, and the slight healing technique rolled up the acid and fell back into his stomach. Then, dots of warm white light penetrated the young dragon's body. The acid will erode the esophagus and cause damage to the esophageal mucosa when it returns upward. Therefore, after each acid reflux, it is best to apply a treatment technique to soothe the esophagus. Without ranitidine, it is impossible to reduce the damage caused by acid reflux fluid to the esophageal mucosa, and the same is true with cleansing and treatment. I'm so witty. After the healing spell came off, the young dragon snorted, and judging from his body language, he felt that he had relaxed a lot. Gretel thought for a moment and threw down another magical spell. The tenacity of a bear. The subject is given the physique of a bear, making it stronger and able to endure more damage and pain. At the same time, the digestive ability has also been greatly enhanced. What used to take 3 hours to digest can now be digested in 1.5 hours. Every time he eats poisonous insects, add this magic to him to help him digest quickly and empty his stomach contents quickly, Greed told the copper dragon couple solemnly. Avoid eating too much and avoid eating 3 hours before going to bed. When the child grows older and strengthens his body, there should be no problem. Gastric motility medicine. There is no gastric motility medicine, but the gastric motility magic is the same. Combined treatment of surgery and magic, achieved. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1513. Surgery addresses the main contradiction, while magic provides post-treatment treatment, complementing each other. As soon as the pain was relieved, the little dragon ate the poisonous insects in huge gulps without even raising its head. Perhaps the red copper dragon's genes do contain a fondness for poisons. After being able to eat a large amount of poisons, it looks the same every day and changes drastically in 3 days. It almost grows when the wind blows. He was taller, bigger, and his scales were shiny. Even abilities that had never appeared before began to appear little by little. Noctis. Look. Come and see. After living around the hospital for half a month, the copper dragon Delphine was full of surprise and shouted to her husband to come and see their child. The little guy can climb the rocky mountain. Yes, on the hills near the mage tower, the reddish-brown baby dragon is climbing up the steep, almost vertical stone wall in a posture that goes against common sense. You can't see how it flaps its wings or uses its hind legs and tail to support it. The little guy's 4 legs are as if they are stuck to the stone wall, as easy as walking on the ground. Spider walking technique. Noctis and his wife stood side by side, looking up at the child climbing up, his face full of relief and emotion. He is finally able to use this spell freely. Originally, his strength was not enough to support him to do this. During this period, after eating so many poisons, he was finally able to do it. Yes. Thanks to the mage Nordmark. Look, how fast our children grow up. Thank him properly. That's for sure. I need to thank him properly. In addition to giving gifts and rewards, I think of other ways to thank him. As a result, Gretel received a lot of precious ores, a lot of poisonous scorpions, poisonous snakes, poisonous centipedes, and various large poisonous creatures, grit, and also received a huge surprise. His patients have added a new batch of bosses. Noctis spared no effort to spread the word to his friends, relatives, and people of his own race. Nordmark Mage is really awesome. Really strong. Other healers can't see the disease well, but he can really see it well. Everyone who has various incurable diseases or old injuries that are difficult to deal with should go to him for treatment. By the way, if the dependents in your territory have any incurable diseases that cannot be cured, you can take them to Master Nordmark to see what the road is too far to make it. The copper dragon Noctis, as long as I am free, as long as I don't have to go to Sky Dragon City on duty during this period, I am willing to take them to see a doctor. Anyway, Master Nordmark said that he is willing to accept more patients and see more cases. As for the cost of treatment, Master Nordmark said that this is not important, at least for dependents who have no money, this is not important. Gretel? When did I say that? Well, even if I didn't say it, I actually did it. Seeing more cases of dragon blood dependents and humanoid creatures will greatly improve me. Moreover, you can also collect chromosomes, compile a database, and study what each chromosome point does. As for the fact that there are too many patients and they can't be cured, Gret Nordmark, will never fight alone again. I have a lot of people now. Come on, nature priests. Leon Carlos, enter. Conjuration-based medical mages, come on. After traveling thousands of miles here, in addition to doing research, of course you also have to help me with work. Besides, seeing more of various cases will be of great benefit to your growth. This dwarf says he has a stomachache. Take him for magic fluoroscopy and ultrasound first to figure out what the disease is. This wild boar man said that his leg hurts. It hurts all the time. It's especially painful when it's cloudy and rainy. Have you broken a bone before? Take it to a magic fluoroscopy first to see if the bone is not properly connected. This centaur pregnant woman said that she was bleeding uncontrollably and asked for help in preserving the fetus. Go and ask for an elder from the order of the God of Nature. When there are more and more miscellaneous patients, it is not Gretel who faces the pressure first, but Leon Carlos. The executive director of a non-human hospital took the bull by the horns and acted like a first diagnosis doctor and pre-examination and triage and general resident. Inquire about the condition, determine the examinations the patient needs, and determine which type of therapist is needed to treat it, whether it is a common disease or a complicated disease. Except for the Dragon Clan, all other patients come to him for first-hand treatment. Registration, consultation, preliminary examination, sending for further examination, sending to such and such therapist. If you really can't figure it out, if you really can't judge, then go ask Greed to appear. Although he was the only one working, with the data support of the mage Tattling and the human support of at least 10 skeleton nurses, skin trappers, he still managed to hold on. In front of others, he was calm and leisurely, but behind the scenes, he was frantically flipping through books, information, and all the records in the mage tower, until he had 2 dark circles on his face. When I get up every morning, I have to give myself some encouragement so that I can stand calmly in front of others and greet the next wave of patients and their families. Greed saw that it was really tragic for him to be like this, but he couldn't stop it. He could only silently input the cases he had encountered before into the tower spirit as much as possible for the convenience of this disciple to check. Hospitalization, everyone has to go through it. The so-called doctor who always lives in the hospital responds 24/7. After a year of hospitalization, I have withstood all pressures. Steel is forged by 100 times and forged by a fierce fire. Real gold. Only after 1 year of hospitalization can one be promoted from a resident to an attending physician, and then take charge of one's own business. Leon, come on. After this wave, it's hard to say whether he can be promoted to attending physician, mainly because there is no such professional title in this world, but advancing to level 9 mage is not far away. Leon Carlos is silently enduring the pressure, accumulating data, and preparing for his transformation from quantitative to qualitative changes and soaring into the sky. And Gretel's other disciple, Anivia's research, has also reached another difficulty. Why do these lizard eggs keep dying? What she is doing recently is a bold, and arguably somewhat crazy, research. The eggs are removed from the female lizard and then combined with the sperm from the male lizard to form fertilized eggs. Then, the fertilized eggs are placed in the magic circle to be cultivated, and a large amount of energy is provided to them, so that during the process of division, they become stronger and can be upgraded from half a level to the first level. After culturing for a period of time, the fertilized eggs that have divided several times are put back into the female lizard, allowing it to continue to grow. Neither Elder Knox nor Elder Wood were very optimistic about this plan. They thought it was too unconventional, too unnatural, and too contrary to the nature of the lizard. However, Greed strongly supports this. It looks like a pretty good direction. Go give it a try, pay attention to every detail, and explore everything possible. However, Greed's words of support were simple, and his words met with his words. Anivia is in dire straits, failure, failure, endless failure. When taking eggs from the belly of a female lizard, the delicate eggs were broken by a heavy hand. They were broken when they were taken out and could not be used. Take it again, take it again, take it again, and finally succeed. I put the male lizard's sperm in, but it is not fertilized. It was another round of back and forth, adjusting the temperature, adjusting the humidity, and adjusting the pH of the liquid that soaked the eggs. After many adjustments, the adjustment was unsuccessful. During the morning meeting, the necromancer attending the meeting smiled and said, "Not correct? You can just use lizard body parts. Cut off a part of the female lizard's body and use a magic circle to maintain its activity and use it to cultivate fertilized eggs. Necromancers can do this kind of thing, but nature priests really can't do it." But this suggestion also gave Anivia inspiration. She took the secretions from the female lizard's body, soaked the eggs in them, and finally succeeded in creating fertilized eggs, but unfortunately it did not last a day. I went to retrieve eggs again, but all the eggs were removed. Yes, change it to another one. The female lizard whose eggs have been taken away is not happy yet, and has been unable to enter the state of producing eggs. There is no other way. I need to apply the soothing technique in the morning, the pink book in the evening, and the soothing technique again the next morning. After so much stumbling and tossing back and forth, I was finally able to produce fertilized eggs stably. But so far, no fertilized egg has been able to divide normally in the magic circle and live stably for more than 3 days. Great energy supply. The fertilized egg dies. Energy supply is low. The fertilized egg dies. The energy content is wrong. The fertilized egg dies. After tossing away all the eggs in 10 female lizards, Anivia finally asked her teacher for help at the morning meeting. This time, another colleague from Black Crow Swamp said with a smile. It sounds a bit like cloning. Well, you can give it a try and use cloning instruments to create an environment and let these fertilized eggs develop. What? Cloning? 8-ring necromancy? Anivia looked in disbelief. Let me, a level 9 nature priest, use an 8th level necromancy spell. Not to mention the problem of mismatched majors, even if I really broke the pot and used necromancy, I would not be able to use the 8th ring necromancer. Not to mention the cloning spell, it's notoriously expensive. Although all 8th level spells are expensive, among a group of 8 and 9 level spells, cloning is famous for being expensive, surpassing limited wish spells and other spells. You can imagine how expensive it is. Sounds reasonable. Just as Anivia was about to say goodbye, her teacher already held her chin and muttered. Cloning is to create a suitable environment to guide the reverse differentiation of somatic cells into stem cells and then direct differentiation. What you need now is to let the fertilized eggs divide. The principle is the same, you can give it a try. Anivia watched helplessly as her teacher turned around and looked at the necromancers with a smile. Can you do her a favor? Build a suitable environment? Don't worry, I will count all the expenses in the research. I will withdraw them from the Mage Tower first, and then settle the settlement with the Dragon Clan. Little things, the necromancer who attended the morning meeting took care of everything. I'll take people there after the meeting. Anivia, can I say no? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1514. Anivia, you can't be biased when doing research. Life and death are part of life, and it's normal to cooperate with necromancers. Don't imitate those elves. Teacher, I'm not. You and Leon got along well before. Try to cooperate with other necromancers and at least learn something from them. For example, cloning, which is actually a wonderful life magic. Teacher, I didn't. In principle, cloning is used to cultivate fertilized eggs, and it is very professionally relevant. I have a hunch that this path may be possible in the future, and it won't hurt to try it. Gretel warned his disciples earnestly, and at the same time, he also enjoyed the fun of teaching his disciples. Anivia struggled twice, finally got the word and answered quickly. Teacher, I'm just worried about the cost, the cloning technique costs too much. Although Black Crow Swamp values the teacher very much, after all, we can't. You can't use them as cash machines, teacher. It is normal for everyone to come and go. If you ask them to help you get a cloning facility, it may not be one, but several. They are not set up for you, but for your disciples. This favor is too big, I can't bear it. Ah, no problem. Gretel waved with a smile. Don't worry, Black Crow Swamp won't care about this, not to mention that all expenses can be settled with the Dragon Clan, even if they pay out of their own pockets, they are willing. You, teacher, and I, the favor we have given Black Crow Swamp is not just a little or two. Even if you don't take into account the Virus Research Institute in the Eagle Country and the necromancers who are making progress in the Research Institute, just the fact that Archmage Hines lands on Evermeet Island is enough for Black Crow Swamp to cheer. Year. That's Elf Island. It's Elf Island. It's the Elf Island that has always rejected them and never allowed them to go to the island. If I hadn't worked hard to create opportunities for them and convinced the elves, how would they have had this opportunity? Anavia instantly felt like Alexander. The teacher's favor, that's the teacher's favor. She doesn't have any benefits for Black Crow Swamp. It's really embarrassing for a level 9 nature priest to be raised by a teacher and use the teacher's resources for research. Don't think too much, Greet comforted her leisurely. It's normal to fail several times or dozens of times when doing research. Before, teacher, you and I failed at least 1,000 or 800 times at the Research Institute in Eagle Country. As long as it succeeds in the end, don't worry, as long as it succeeds and can effectively increase the fertility rate of the Dragon Clan, we here in the Dragon Clan will have whatever we want. Not to mention reimbursing research expenses. Even if half of the homes of dragons in need are emptied, they will still queue up to give money. Anavia only felt that the burden on her shoulders was heavier. To be successful, you will be reimbursed only if you are successful. If you are not successful, the money will be thrown into the water. No, you can still hear a sound if you sprinkle it into the water. The cost of a cloning technique is said to start at 10,000 gold coins. Take 10,000 gold coins and throw them into the water one by one. From morning to dark, if the right hand is sour, switch to the left hand, if the left hand is sour, then switch to the right hand, but you may not be able to finish throwing it. If you fail once, you will burn 10,000 gold coins. If you fail again, you will burn another 10,000 gold coins. Not to mention, what she needs now is not a complete cloning technique, but using the components of the cloning technique to create a culture tank suitable for the development of fertilized eggs. It requires the top mage from Black Crow Swamp, who is very knowledgeable about cloning, to personally modify the magic circle and magic device. What kind of favor is that? That favor is far more than a single cloning technique. I didn't say anything, just work hard. Only by working hard, researching hard, and making what the teacher wants as soon as possible can we repay the teacher's support. Anavia went to work with confidence. At noon that day, the Archmage led by Black Crow Swamp rushed over and brought 3 or 4 disciples to help her install and debug for 3 days. With the stable environment built by the clone warehouse, the progress of the experiment has skyrocketed. At the very least, the fertilized egg has obtained a stable development environment, can survive, and begins to divide. 1 point and 2. 2 points 4. 4 points and 8. 18 points and 16. Anivia held her breath, widened her eyes, and looked carefully under the microscope. Life is really amazing. Such a tiny cell can continue to divide, and finally turn into a baby with arms and legs that can breathe, move, cry, and laugh. Well, after living for 3 days, should I move it into the female lizard, let it continue to grow, and finally hatch out a baby lizard? Anivia started to take the next step very nervously. One after another, the small bubbles that had divided to 16 cells moved into the female lizard's body, waiting eagerly for them to continue to grow. However, after waiting for 1 day, 2 days, and 3 days, and using his mental strength to sense, no more life breath appeared in the female lizard's body. Is he dead? Could it be that she worked so hard to cultivate them in the alchemy device, and for this reason, she made the teacher a favor and asked the fertilized eggs to be retrieved from the Black Crow Swamp, and then they all died after being returned to the female lizard? Anavia was unwilling to give in. She was afraid that her mental power was not delicate enough and her perception was not enough, so she invited all high-level nature priests to come over and take a look. Elder Irwin shook his head, Elder Wood shook his head, and Elder Knox pondered for a long time, but still shook his head. I felt the breath of life you mentioned, but it was very, very, very subtle. Moreover, there was no vigorous feeling, as if it had become one with the mother's body and started to grow. What does this mean? Not dead, but not alive either? If Anavia asked Greet for advice, she would probably hear Greet sigh like this. So the spirit of human women is really tough. They received a large dose of hormones to promote ovulation, and an egg retrieval needle with a diameter of 0.9 to 1.6 millimeters and a length of 35 centimeters was pierced through the lower abdomen and penetrated into the ovaries to retrieve mature eggs. After such an operation, despite such psychological pressure, when the fertilized egg is implanted in the body, the fertilized egg can still implant successfully. But unfortunately, she didn't ask for advice, or was too embarrassed to ask the teacher for everything, so she didn't hear the judgment, probably not implantation. Since the fertilized eggs are still inside the female lizard, that's great. Anivia worked hard to communicate with the female lizard, tried to send her natural breath, and tried to persuade her, it's safe now, you can start incubating the eggs. However, no matter how she transported her, or comforted her, the female lizard just lay there wilting, looking like I'll pretend to be dead if you don't let me go. Finally, it was Ashu-Isang who solved the mystery. It doesn't want to hatch eggs. Lizards have this ability. They store fertilized eggs in their bodies and keep them stagnant until they feel that the situation has improved and they can hatch baby lizards, and then let them continue to grow. From lizard eggs. You. How do you know? I saw it. Where I used to live, there was a nest of lizards nearby. The male lizard died not long after they mated, and it took about a year for the female lizard to lay eggs. To say the least, elves are powerful, well-informed, and have enough time to observe various animals and plants. Since Anavia couldn't hold the female lizard to hatch the eggs, she had to find another way. I use the cloning alchemy device to incubate the eggs instead of the female lizard, so that's okay. She broke the jar, took out half of the fertilized eggs, separated them one by one, and put them into the alchemy device. According to the experimental plan, each fertilized egg is set up with a different magic circle and is affected by different energies. Increase energy supply by 1%. Increase energy supply by 2%. Increase energy supply by 3%. Increase fire energy supply by 1%. Increase water energy supply by 1%. The experimental group, the control group, and another group were placed in the belly of the female lizard for incubation. Anivia maintained the magic circle with great concern, sensing the situation inside and praying every day. Survive, survive, survive. Grow, 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 grow. Even if you can't grow into a monster or acquire any extraordinary abilities, please try your best to survive. Even if she worked hard and put all her energy into these fertilized eggs, she still couldn't stop the fertilized eggs from dying one by one. Seeing these fertilized eggs dying, Anivia was heartbroken, so she could only use them as waste. She used these fertilized eggs for research, chromosome testing, and dissection. Well, this small group can probably contain more than 200, more than 300, more than 400 cells. But the chromosomes did not undergo any changes, and no extraordinary points appeared. This group lasted a few days longer than the previous group, and it can basically be regarded as somewhat formed. The shape of a long, curled up ball can already be seen, but there is still no extraordinary point. This group can see the end. The head and tail can be distinguished, but other parts are still invisible. It's really amazing. Knowing that a cub grows from such a small fertilized egg is still different from watching it grow up little by little. You think it's magical now? The necromancer who came to debug and maintain the alchemy equipment laughed at her unceremoniously. The cloning technique is like this. A piece of meat is put in, and it gradually grows into a small ball, getting bigger little by little. Watch it grow into a lizard-like ball, Watch it gradually separate its head and body, watch its limbs grow, watch its tail gradually disappear. I have a picture album here. Come over when you are free, and I will give it to you. Look. But the album is an album after all, not a physical object, let alone a living being that carries the breath of life and can be perceived with mental power. Anivia felt that if she could completely observe the incubation process of a fertilized egg, she might be able to integrate what she had learned before and advance immediately. Thanks to Ed for the 500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1515. Feeling that advancement was just around the corner, Anivia worked harder and devoted herself to research day and night. Collect sperm, collect eggs, create fertilized eggs, and put them into the alchemy device. Collect sperm, collect eggs, create fertilized eggs, and stuff them back into the belly of the female lizard. Adjust the alchemy equipment, adjust the energy supply array, work hard to sense, study hard, and compare. Soothe the female lizard, communicate with the female lizard, comfort the female lizard, communicate with the female lizard. Anivia is very busy every day. I ate in front of the lizard cage, and several times I almost stuffed the lizard food into my mouth while staring at the cage. If you sleep in front of the alchemy device, you will be able to stand up as soon as the alchemy magic circle beeps. Before opening his eyes, he had already knocked himself against the glass cover outside the alchemy box, knocking himself awake. If he hadn't been a level 9 natural priest and his physical strength had reached a very high level, he might have had a bump on his forehead if he had hit his head. Of course, if it were her teacher, the most unbeatable nature priest in history, Gretel Nordmark, the shame of the nature walker, she would really have a bump on her head. If it doesn't come out, maybe it's because it's not heavy. After being so busy for half a month, Greet saw how miserable she was with the thick dark circles under her eyes, messy hair, and 2 pieces of hay hanging from the lizard's nest, and couldn't help but leave her alone after the morning meeting. She asked. Anivia smiled bitterly. There is really too much work. In addition to completing the scheduled work, I also have to take time to observe the lizard eggs. The lizard eggs in various time periods, you have to keep the time right. After the time is passed, you will not be able to see it at this stage. This extra job not only greatly increased her workload, but also made her working time extremely fragmented. 2 days a day is fine, but after half a month, although I am not unable to hold on, I am still very tired. So why do you want to observe the lizard eggs? Do you need to determine the time period? Gretel didn't pay attention for a while, and the disciple came up with a new task, so he couldn't help but ask further questions. Anivia cheered up a little, tried to open her eyes wide, and explained to the teacher. When Greet heard her say, "We need to observe the changes in fertilized eggs at each time period," he couldn't help but shook his head. Then why are you observing lizard eggs? If you just need to observe the division of fertilized eggs and the changes in the embryo, you go and observe the eggs. What? Anivia was stunned. When I reacted, I wanted to give myself a slap. Yeah, why not observe the eggs? Obviously, eggs are so much easier and cheaper than lizard eggs. It doesn't hurt if you break them. You can eat them later anyway. So why not look at eggs? Am I out of my mind? But, as for eggs, how do I determine the time dash? Insemination in batches, Greet gave the answer without thinking. Find new hens, inseminate them in batches, calculate the time to collect the eggs, and calculate the time to dissect them. If you want to see the initial stages of fertilized egg development, you can also take the eggs from the hen's belly. Anivia walks away in shame. Gretel suddenly stopped her. By the way, as for the egg development process, I remember that they made an observation record in the virus laboratory of the Eagle Country. You can send a message later and ask them to pass the record over, just as I said. With Gretel's words, the observation records were sent out very quickly. Even though they had to go through several mage towers, they were also in the hands of Anavia 7 days later. During this time, Anavia also arranged for experimental assistance. She went directly to Leon Carlos and asked him for a few natives to help raise chickens. The rough-handed savages are responsible for feeding, turning the eggs, and ensuring that the hens are alive and the eggs are not dead. The meticulous dwarf is responsible for keeping track of time, taking notes, and reminding her on time. From the time the hens lay eggs, a batch of eggs is taken every hour, photographed, cracked, dissected under a microscope, and the embryonic morphology of each egg is recorded. Draw pictures, analyze and make tables. The next day, I saw a pulsing red dot, which seemed to be a heart. On the fourth day, I saw small black spots slowly getting darker in color, which seemed to be eyes. On the fifth day, you can already see the curved shape of the embryo, and you can see it clearly with your eyes. That's the eyes. On the sixth day, when I looked at the egg, I could see two small round balls, the head and the torso, from the outside of the eggshell. After breaking the eggshell and dissecting it, I could see the appearance of chicken wings and legs from the embryo. Anivia was immersed in the joy of gaining new knowledge, and her aura was increasing day by day. Her changes naturally alarmed the researchers around her, and the priests of the Order of the God of Nature whispered, "It looks like it's going to be advanced. So fast, how long has it been since we got here?" As expected, it's only when you are with the teacher and trains her step by step that you can advance quickly. Hey, if you put it this way, are we going to win the bet we made before? You still bet? Elder Nox's face darkened. His disciple, the 14th level natural priest Oban Bonilla chuckled. Isn't this just idle time? I go in and out of the mage tower, and I always chat with those necromancers, so I made a bet with them. He bet on Anavia to advance first, and the other party bet on Leon Carlos to advance first. From Auburn's point of view, there is absolutely no chance of losing this bet. Anavia has been doing research. Who doesn't know that doing research, especially pioneering research, is the easiest way to advance? What is that Leon Carlos doing? Scheduling patients around the clock. Arrange for this person to be illuminated by a magic light source, arrange for that person to go through magnetic resonance imaging, arrange for this person to be treated by a certain archmage, and arrange for that person to be treated by a certain natural priest. Every day just for medical records, I have to write a thick stack and send them to Master Nordmark. How can it be possible to advance without personally treating it, and without getting feedback from nature and the world? He must have won this bet. Those 100 standard magic crystals must be his. You bet on my disciples. A question suddenly sounded from above his head. Elder Nox quickly raised his head and saw the magic crystal screen above his head. At some point, it lit up, revealing Gretel's overlooking face. What bet? Well, Leon Carlos is writing furiously. In recent times, intensive treatment work has given him some insights. In the past few days, in addition to working, he also tried every means to find time to record his feelings. Whether they are humans or humanoids, their essence is the same. Respiratory system, cardiovascular system, digestive system, urinary system, sensory system, muscle-skeletal movement system. The body is a delicate and complex structure, all systems complement each other, and any one of them is indispensable without other systems. Changes in each system will cause changes in other systems. Changes in body size will cause changes in the respiratory and cardiovascular systems. Different body shapes will cause internal organs to be distributed in different locations, as well as muscles and bones to be connected in different ways. Different food intake methods are adapted to different digestive systems, and the intake of different foods and different nutrients also support different muscle-skeletal systems. When I was in Nevis, I saw only humans, dwarves, and savages. After arriving at Dragon Island, I discovered that there are so many races in the world. After various explorations and medical procedures, it was suddenly discovered that no matter whether it was a person with 2 heads or a person with wings, whether it was a person with 2 legs, a person with 4 legs, or a person with 4 legs and 2 arms, their true nature was it's all the same. When he was studying medicine in the past, Master Nordmark once taught him this: the human body is a whole. When you study it part by part, but when you treat it, you need to integrate them. At that time, I just memorized it, but now, I seem to understand it. By extension, undead creatures have lost many parts and systems, so they lack vitality and require manpower to maintain them. If you use magic to simulate these systems of theirs, for example, if only the skeleton is left with bones, simulate muscles on it. If the ghoul's digestive system is finished, use magic to rebuild it so that it can better digest the food it ingests. Food. So, can these undead creatures be stronger and exist longer? Can the consumption of necromancy spells be smaller? Leon Carlos always feels that once he figures this problem out, advancement is just around the corner. The 5-ring necromancy spell, Animated Army of the Dead, can be used to raise an army of skeletons and zombies with one spell. He always couldn't do it well in the past. He could only create one undead creature at a time. If he wanted to create several undead creatures at the same time, especially several different types of undead creatures, he would always be in a hurry and lose sight of the other. Is it possible to understand the nature of human beings, use the power of death to create a template, add a set of corpses and skeletons, fill in whatever is missing, and then do it in batches? I understand. After suddenly figuring this out, Leon Carlos suddenly felt enlightened. Research this model, make this spell, and advance it, right before your eyes. Despite his busy schedule, he still had some sense and hurriedly reported to his teacher, requesting to temporarily step down from his post as hospital director and enter into seclusion for a short time. And this retreat inevitably shocked everyone in the Mage Tower. What? The hospital is temporarily closed. Not accepting patients. For the seriously wounded and seriously ill who are about to die, please ask the magic healers to take care of them. For other patients, wait until the hospital opens. That kid Carlos is going to advance. Oops, the bet is lost. Auburn Bonilla uttered an ouch and ran back. He rushed to Anavia's research room and was about to push the door in and urge her to speed up when he saw a sign hanging at the door, refusing outsiders to enter. Master Nordmark's teacher, Elder Irwin, heard the sound and came out from the opposite side and made a silence gesture to him. What are you doing in there? Anivia is in retreat. She said yes. It feels like she will advance to the next level soon. Thanks, the coconut juice is really delicious and I gave you 600 starting coins as a reward. Next time, boss, if you want to give rewards on your iPhone, please use the web version if it is convenient. Apple will charge you a lot of money on the Apple version, and it will arrive 3 months later.